Hello again. So, last time where we left off with this question that let's say we have this system with things arranged as shown in the figure. We users basically run applications on this system. These applications they access the hardware, but we discussed that applications usually cannot access the hardware directly, and therefore they access this hardware via this operating system as an intermediary. So my question to you was, how does this hardware applications and operating system interact or interplay with each other when you, let's say, double click on the icon of a film, and starting from that point until the film starts playing in a media player on your monitor screen. So what different steps you can identify, broad strokes, not detail. Details are different from system to system. Just some kind of things that would have to happen so that the film starts playing on your monitor screen. I hope you guys gave some thought to it and came up with some steps. Most of them will be similar, slightly different, but mostly similar steps that happened from clicking on a film icon to the film being played on the screen. So if I were to answer this question, I would say that I double click on the mouse. The mouse basically, the mouse is connected via physical cable or Bluetooth, etc., to the motherboard. So that information was sent to the motherboard, and the motherboard, through the motherboard I/O subsystem, it gets passed to the operating system. So the operating system knows that mouse was clicked, double clicked. So then the information, when it was transferred to the motherboard that the mouse was clicked, it also converts this information into a coordinate on the screen. Your screen is composed of pixels, and they basically have coordinates from 00 to whatever the length and width of your screen is. And the whole screen you could imagine as a 2D plane, and X and Y axis for each pixel. You can have the coordinates on those X and Y axis. So the coordinates were also passed from the motherboard to the operating system, that the mouse was clicked at these coordinates. Okay? So at that moment, operating system would then try to guess, okay, what was being displayed at that particular coordinate when the mouse was double clicked. It has all this information internally. So it will deduce that at that particular moment when the mouse double clicked at that coordinate, the icon of that particular film was being displayed. So from this, the operating system will deduce that the user double clicked on that film icon. Now it will check, what do I have to do in such cases when a film icon is double clicked. It will find in its internal repertoire that whenever a film icon is double clicked, you have to play that film in a media player. So the operating system will look for what's the media player that's being associated with this particular type of film. Here in our example, we will assume that the VLC media player is being used. So it will go look for that executable program for this VLC media player. Now all these executable programs, they are stored on the hard disk. So the hard disk also is a piece of hardware which the operating system can access through the motherboard. So it will go and load that vlc.exe file from the hardware into the RAM. Again, RAM is this memory piece of hardware. To run every program, it has to be loaded in RAM first. So the operating system, now it wants to run the media player, so it will load the executable for that media player into the physical RAM and start running it. It will start running this vlc.exe and pass to it the file name for that film. The file path for that film. Okay, the icon that was being displayed was for a particular film file, and that had a path associated with it, indicating where on the hard disk that particular film is being stored. So the VLC media player, it will be passed the path to that film from the operating system, and when it runs, it will try to access that film on the hardware. Again, the film is being stored on hard disk, which is a piece of hardware. So the VLC media player, it will try to read that file for that film, but as we said, it's an application and it cannot access the hard disk directly. So it will request the operating system to read that particular file for it. The operating system, it would go access the hard disk, read the file that's being requested by the VLC media player, and load it into the RAM again. Now that the VLC media player has the film in RAM, it will access that film and frame by frame start, or at least try to display the content of that film on the screen. Again, the screen is a hardware. So the VLC media player, it cannot access the graphical subsystem directly to display on the screen. So it will request the operating system to display these frames on the screen for it. The operating system will again oblige and display those screens on, those frames on the screen. Okay? So that's kind of a broad overview. It's overall, it's I mean, not exactly the detailed view that will be actually happening on your system, but it gives a rough idea of how the hardware and software interplay with each other via this operating system when things happen or things are run on this platform on your system. So here in broad lines, we described what happened when you double click on a film icon and the film started playing on the screen. Okay, so again, we saw that none of our applications, they cannot access the hardware directly, and to access the hardware, they have to request the operating system. The operating system plays an intermediary whenever an application wants to access the hardware. So I hope this example makes it clear that all this hardware is being managed by the operating system, and these applications, they basically access the hardware through or via the operating system. So how does it happen? Here we see the operating system, it kind of exposes an interface to the applications. So this interface, we call it system calls. System calls are like function calls, but they are slightly different. We'll see how they are different, but for the moment, you can assume that they are kind of function calls which the applications can call to access the functionality of the operating system. The operating system exposes calls to access all hardware elements. You have calls to access memory, you have calls to access the hard disk, you have calls to access a monitor, etc. So all these calls are exposed to the applications, and the applications basically use these calls to access the hardware via the operating system. Okay? Just like this printf, it wanted to access the monitor to display this string. So it called this printf function. It's a library function. Internally, it calls the operating system call for called write, which basically writes data onto the hardware. So in this case, the hardware being the monitor or the graphical subsystem, and the string would be written to the graphical subsystem via the operating system call write. So similarly, there are other system calls to access other parts of the hardware. We'll see system calls in detail in the next few lectures. For the moment, just remember that it's an interface that an operating system provides to the applications so that the applications can access the hardware by calling these OS system calls, which are like functions. So by calling these functions, the operating system lets the applications access the underlying hardware. So this is one interface that the operating system exposes to the applications. On the other end, the operating system has to deal with the hardware. Now, every hardware is different and they are accessed differently. So usually the operating system does not know how a hardware works. Basically, there are thousands, hundreds, millions of hardware being manufactured by different companies, and the operating system does not usually know how every piece of hardware works. But the manufacturer of that hardware knows. The manufacturer knows how to access this hardware. How do you read data from this hardware? How do you write data from this hardware? Right? So with each hardware, the manufacturer provides some code. We call them device drivers. These device drivers lets you access that hardware that the manufacturer has provided. Let's say you have a hard disk and a USB key and some memory card. Now these are all storage devices, but they store data differently. So you have to read and write to these devices, but at the very low level, you have to provide different commands in hardware for writing data in the hard disk, different commands to write data on the USB, and different commands to write data to the memory card in the hardware. But the operating system usually does not have that level of detail. The manufacturers of those hardware devices like hard disk, memory card, and USB key, they provided these device drivers for those particular hardware. And once you install those device drivers, now the operating system can use the generic read and write commands to write data to each of these pieces of hardware. The device driver for each hardware device will convert or translate the operating system command of write to the series of commands required to write on that particular hardware. When the operating system writes on the hard disk driver will convert the write command to the right steps that are needed to write data on the hard disk. Similarly, when the write command is issued for the memory card or the USB, their respective device drivers will convert the write command into a series of steps that are required to write data on those particular devices. Okay? So at the lower level, the operating system interfaces or interacts with the hardware via this device driver layer. So there are two interfaces that operating system has usually. One that is exposed to the applications via system calls, and the other interface that faces the hardware or interacts with the hardware via those device drivers. Okay, so all the interplay that we saw in these examples that happened between applications, OS, and hardware, it happened via these system calls between OS and applications and through the device drivers between operating system and the hardware. Let's look at this picture in a little more detail. The operating system, as we discussed in our earlier slides, that it's a big and complex piece of software. It's composed of many different parts. We can divide the operating system software broadly into two categories. One we call the kernel. The kernel is basically the core part of the operating system that performs the core services that are required in every operating system. Okay? So that's the core of the operating system, which we call kernel. And then around that core, we build other software that are interfaces, either that lets you access the kernel or lets kernel access the hardware, or additional software that uses the kernel functionality and builds on it. So you have different system libraries. Libraries basically provide you some extra functionality built on these kernel interfaces, which you call system calls. Usually system calls are a little cumbersome to use directly. So most of the time, these libraries, they provide you wrapper functions to access these system calls. Just like in our previous example, we had that print command that printed hello world on the screen. Now print is a library function, but it's a library function that is a wrapper around or that internally uses the operating system call called write, W-R-I-T-E. Right? So if we could have used the write system call directly, applications can and sometimes do access system calls directly. But as I said, system calls usually are cumbersome to use. There is a lot of detail involved, and sometimes you need to have some knowledge of assembly and hardware. But applications usually, sometimes can directly access the system calls. But most of the time, libraries, they provide wrappers or easy to use functions which internally use the system calls. So the printf function that we saw in the last slide is much easier to use than a write system call, for example. Right? So these libraries also, they are called system software, and they come with operating systems usually. So an operating system, we can say, is composed of kernel at its core and some additional functionalities built around the kernel in terms of libraries or some other applications that are built on the system calls or kernel interfaces and provide you with some basic functionality. In Linux, you will often hear the term distribution. So what is a Linux distribution? You might have heard the names of different Linux distributions. For example, Ubuntu is a very popular Linux distribution. Debian is another one. Kali is another one. And there are like hundreds. So what's a Linux distribution? The Linux distributions are basically operating systems built on the Linux kernel. And all these distributions, the kernel is a piece of software called Linux. Okay? So the similarity in all these distributions is that they use the same kernel, the Linux kernel. And the difference comes in the additional software that is bundled around the kernel and provided to you as a package. So the kernel is the same, the software around the kernel is different. What's in that software around the kernel? We have these system libraries. Different distributions provide you with different system libraries or system software and some applications that they provide by default. Let's say you have some application for word processing. So different distributions would provide you with different word processing applications. Browsers would be different in different operating systems distributions. You have these window managers or display systems that are different in different distributions. But although the facade, the front that you see, different applications, they're different, but internally all these Linux distributions, they use the Linux kernel. You can search for the Linux kernel on the internet. Its code is freely available. It's a very, very, very big software. You will see lots of, I think the length of the software in terms of number of lines of code runs in millions if you include the device drivers and everything. But still, it's something that's freely available, and those who have the knowledge can go and look at the implementation. For you, it would be slightly or perhaps a lot intimidating right now to look at a piece of software that comprises millions of lines of code. But hopefully, this will be start of a journey which would let you explore different operating systems and how they work. And ultimately, I hope some of you will go and read the Linux kernel code and hopefully also contribute to it. So, so that's basically a scheme, our general scheme of things. We have the operating system that acts as an intermediary between applications and hardware, and internally it can be divided into the kernel as well as different system libraries or software provided with it. So in this particular course, we'll focus on the jobs or tasks performed by the kernel, because kernel is the whole core around which everything is built, and the kernel basically performs the main or central duties that are associated with an operating system. Let's have a look. What does an operating system, or more specifically a kernel, does? Basically, we can think of an operating system as a resource manager. It manages all the hardware. Hardware includes CPU, the memory, which we call RAM in general language, the storage, which you may know by the name of hard disk, but it also includes all the other permanent storages like USB, flash drives, memory cards, whatever you have, and all the I/O devices. I/O stands for input output. Input output devices are used to give information to the system via the input devices, or the system gives you some feedback or information back via the output devices. Input devices classically include the keyboard, the mouse, etc., the mic even now these days. And the output devices usually are composed of, include the monitor, the printer, the speakers of your system, etc. Anything that the system uses to convey some information to you. So all this hardware is managed by the operating system. As we saw in our previous slide, the operating system sits on top of all this hardware, and all this hardware is managed by the operating system. What does managing a CPU mean? So as you know, let's say you have a system with only one CPU, one single core CPU. So how many programs are running at any given time in that system? Usually a system has like hundreds of programs running at any given time. So how do these programs share the CPU between themselves? Because all these programs to run, they have to run on the CPU, but we have only one CPU. So how do hundreds of programs run on one CPU? Again, this thing is managed by the operating system. The operating system allots the CPU to different programs at different times, and then takes the CPU back to allot it to another program. So all this CPU management is done by the operating system, and we'll see how the operating system does it. The same thing for memory. Be only one RAM. All the programs that are running, they have to be in the RAM to be able to run. So how does the RAM is being shared between all these programs? Hundreds of programs at the same time in the same RAM. How do we ensure that each of them gets its proper memory space that is allotted to it, and also make sure that none of these programs can interfere or read the memory allotted to other programs? If I can read the memory allotted to a program that's being run by you, I can perhaps read your password or some other sensitive information. So we have to limit the access of the RAM for each program to the portion of the RAM that has been allocated to that particular program. The program should not be able to access RAM outside that's been allotted to it. Again, how do we implement it? We'll see that the operating system does this memory management. The third part is storage. Storage, as I said, mainly will mean hard disk virus storage, though storage could mean other things also. So all your file, all your data is being stored on the hard disk. How does the hard disk stores data? How is data managed by the hard disk? How does it organizes all these folders and files? And how do we maintain the integrity of the hard disk? Again, all this is performed by the operating system. The I/O input output, again, as I said, the applications cannot access the hardware directly. So when you type on the keyboard, there are hundreds of programs running. Which program should receive this input? Obviously, the one that you intended to, if you're typing in a Microsoft Word, then you want that particular input to go to Microsoft Word, not to the VLC media player or to the Hello World exe. So how does the input output is routed to the correct program? Again, the operating system take care of this. So all these hardware, these are some of the main pieces of hardware that we see are managed by the hardware, the operating system. Similarly, if there are many programs running at any given moment in a system, these programs sometimes need to communicate with each other. Again, how do these programs communicate with each other? These programs cannot access each other's data or memory directly. If they want to communicate with each other, they have to again go through the operating system. The operating system serves an intermediary between different programs if they want to talk to each other. Again, different users and programs are accessing the system at any given moment. How do we protect one user's data from another user? How do we protect one program's data from another program? Again, all this stuff, protection is being done by the operating system. How do we protect our system from external threats, from hackers who might want to steal our data or corrupt our data? How do we protect our system from those attackers? Again, this comes under security and is managed by the operating system. So in this book, we'll see how an operating system does most of this stuff. I think the table of contents that I showed you in that book, the web page for the book, the first two columns in orange, they were about virtualization. So in virtualization, we will study how the operating system manages the CPU and the memory. So this will be covered under virtualization. And then there's the second portion of the book, which talks about concurrency. Concurrency basically is multiple programs running together. How do they communicate with each other and how do they synchronize their activities? So we'll cover that under concurrency. And the third portion of the book talks about persistence, which is basically how do you store data on your hard disk. And also it covers some I/O. So we'll cover this I/O and storage under persistence. Protection and security, there are a few chapters on security in the book, but I'm not sure we'll reach them in this course. So you can look at them on your own, and if you have questions, you can come and talk to me to discuss those questions. So these are basically the main topics that we'll be looking at, how an operating system does all this stuff under the hood when it is running in a system. Okay, so and then throughout the semester, we'll see how the operating system manages CPU and memory, how the operating system manages communication and synchronization between programs, and how the operating system stores data on the hard disk. So we have to implement an operating system that does all the stuff that we discussed in the last slide. But the implementers of the operating systems usually have some goals or some criteria for their operating system. The operating system in general should be an easy to use piece of software because it's intended for the general purpose user. You, me, and all the other people who use computers, they are interacting with the operating system. So the operating system should be an easy to use or convenient to use piece of software. Secondly, it should do all the stuff that it does in an efficient manner. The performance should not be slow because the main part of the operating system is to make the user applications be able to run on a system. The user is usually not concerned with the operating system, but rather the applications running on top of the operating system. So like the media player, the Microsoft Word, browsers, etc. So the operating system runs in the background. If the operating system is slow, it will slow down the performance of every application. Why? Because every application has, accesses the operating system all the time, whether it wants to talk to the hardware, whether it wants to talk to another program, whether it wants to store data on the hard disk, read data from hard disk, it is in contact or using operating system functionality, system calls all the time. So if those system calls are slow, they will slow down every application on it. It is important for the operating system to be an efficient piece of software. Secondly, it has to implement this protection and security that we slightly discussed in the last slide. Protection concerns with protecting your programs from actors inside the system, protecting one program from another program. Both programs are running inside the system. Protecting one user from another user. Okay, protecting their data from illegal access from within the system. So that's protection. Security basically is protecting your data or your system from external threats. Okay, so security has to deal with external world. So again, the operating system has to protect the system from outside hackers or malicious bots, viruses, whatever can access your program and harm the system. These days, most of the devices, the hardware are portable devices, whether they be laptops or mobile phones or IoT devices, sensors, etc. So the portable devices, one constraint is the energy efficiency. All these devices have a battery which can store a limited amount of charge. So again, if your system is not energy efficient and in doing all its tasks, it is consuming a lot of energy, then it will drain the battery very quickly. And again, the users will not be very happy about it. So one of the design goals of modern operating systems is also to be energy efficiency. Energy efficiency at this portable device level is individual affair, right? But you also need energy efficiency with those big systems like cloud centers. They sometimes are so big, have so many hardware processors, hard disks, etc., that sometimes they consume electricity equal to a small city. So again, when you're running that kind of system, the electricity expense is a big part of your budget. So you want your operating system to use, as much less energy as possible to cut down on cost. Okay, so operating systems have to be energy efficient also. So these are some of the design goals that the operating system makers have when they're making soft operating systems, and we'll from time to time touch them during semester. This is a history of some operating systems. They started in 50s, 60s, and then till now. But I think right now the lecture is getting a little longer, so I'll stop and start this and tell you this history in the next lecture. Thank you very much and see you in the next lecture.